Hello everybody, welcome to this prediction video on my channel. I'm your host, Matt, the host of the Matt's channel, and I'll be going over match day, the games of match 2 A2. I won't go over in too much detail because time is of the essence in terms of the two match days, so let's get right into it. Equatorial Guinea versus Guinea-Bissau. Equatorial Guinea, good point against Nigeria, maybe could have won on with more chances. But it's not a bad result, and they, they they need to win against Guinea-Bissau, or if they get a draw, then they've got to get a draw against Ivory Coast. Which who knows where Ivory Coast will be by that stage. As for Guinea-Bissau, I thought they did okay against Ivory Coast in midfield. They did well. Ivory Coast did have some moments where they bossed the midfield, but I'd say Guinea-Bissau were good overall. They struggled up front, but then again, they were up against a good Ivory Coast team. Guinea-Bissau, I imagine, will have more chances. They will need to break Equatorial Guinea down. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but still. But I think they've got to get 4 points, and I think it's doable. It's just a question of who do they get the draw and who do they get the win against in terms of Equatorial Guinea and Guinea-Bissau. It's a game that I think can go either way. And Guinea-Bissau can afford to go behind in the last 20 minutes. It's a game that can go either way, so I'm going to say it's going to be a 1-1 draw. And now Ivory Coast versus Nigeria. Well, Ivory Coast, a fairly good start. They got the win. No Sebastian Haller. I don't know whether he'll be back for this game. The crowd were behind them, so that's going to be a boost. I think they did well against Guinea-Bissau, but I don't think we've seen the best in Ivory Coast yet, which is quite scary from Nigeria's point of view. The draw against Equatorial Guinea was a disappointing one. Could have been worse. Osimhen was both a saviour and a curse in that game. I think only he could have scored against, if anybody, against Equatorial Guinea. That's kind of where Nigeria were in that game, and Osimhen did also miss a big chance in the second half. Maybe could have done better in the first half before his goal too. Nigeria just looked awful in the sun and out wide. I think they were. Zaidu Sanusi was actually fairly good for once, unlike usually at Porto this season. If it was going to happen, it was going to come from either the wit for something towards Osimhen, Ivory Coast's talent with Frank Kessie. There's some speed and aggression. Nigeria, well, Iwobi, he was probably the worst performer in that front four. Centrally, they didn't do anything, and up against Ivory Coast, that's not a good sign at all. I'm thinking this game ends in a 3-1 win for Ivory Coast. And let's go to Group B next. Egypt versus Ghana both got disappointing results. Egypt, I think this probably was more of a case of Mozambique were very good, whereas Ghana, they were underwhelming. But although at the same time, I still think they did have enough to get that win. It's just they didn't apply themselves properly. At this stage, I feel more confident about Egypt than I do about Ghana. Of course, Trezeguet showed up. Salah as well did all right for the T steps up. That's going to be a bad look for Ghana, and Ghana just look a bit flat under Chris Hughton. Kudus is back, then I could maybe be tempted to change my mind, but I'm going to say Egypt win this 2-0. And Cape Verde Islands versus Mozambique. Great result for both teams. Well, Mozambique can they can be frustrating that they didn't get to close out that win against against Egypt. This is a hard one to call for me, so I'm just going to say a 1-1 draw. So now let's go to Group D. So Algeria versus Burkina Faso. Algeria, they were better in the first half. Najjar with the goal. He had a very good disallowed goal as second half wasn't so good. Most of the games I've seen Algeria play, they've struggled to get a goal when they need one towards the end. And in this game, they definitely needed that second goal. They definitely needed to close out the game sooner. They definitely needed to take advantage of their great points. Because when Angola did get back into the game, Algeria, even though they did have some chances towards the end, felt quite limited. And Burkina Faso missed most of the game, but the fact it took a penalty for them to score against Mauritania, that's worrying. And yes, that was a penalty because the Mauritanian player didn't get the ball at all. So definitely a chance for both teams to maybe make amends of what happened in their last games. Youssouf Belaili should be dropped, although knowing Belmadi, he might just keep playing him. Is back. I imagine he'll be on the bench given Baghdad Bounedjah's first half. I think Algeria do have enough. They could even concede a sloppy goal out of somewhere. There's a few different scores I've got in mind, but I'll say they'll score 2 and I'll say they get a clean sheet, just about. And then Mauritania versus Angola. Well, I think Angola, I would imagine, will have more chances. But I'll say it's a close game, though. If there is going to be a game where Mauritania score, it will most likely be this one. And there's not as much pressure for Angola to bump up their goal difference. So I think it might get a clean sheet, but I'll just about say it'll be a 2-1 win. Let's go to Group E next. Start with Tunisia versus Mali. Opponent as well. And they were not convincing up front as well. I don't think Hannibal Mejri would have made a difference. I haven't really seen his impact whenever I have watched Tunisia play with him. So I don't think he would have changed much. It's just the poor finishing, and of course Namibia made their moment count. Tunisia, they definitely need to come to strengthen. It would be very easy to say that they lose again. Mali definitely rejuvenated after that penalty miss from Percy Tau. And defensively, I think they'll be fine against Tunisia. Not too much to worry about, though maybe Tunisia might have their clutch moment. It's very easy to say Mali will win, but I think Tunisia do have enough to get a result, so I'll say it's a 1-1 draw. And South Africa versus Namibia, this is a difficult one, because now that Namibia's beaten Tunisia, that definitely does make it hard to call. South Africa were okay with their chances, apart from the penalty miss against Mali. And I would say Mali do have a good defence. Not many times could Namibia come up against their neighbours South Africa and believe that they've got a strong chance. But this time, if they get a win, maybe a draw, then they've got something to brag about. It's difficult to call, to be honest. Tempted with a Namibia win. Was even wondering about South Africa win, but I'll give this another 1-1 draw. And let's round off with Group F. Start with Morocco versus DR Congo. Certainly, this might be the hardest defense in this group for Morocco to break down. Generally, DR Congo were good against Zambia defensively. Morocco, they made their chances count against Tanzania. They had pretty much all the chances, but besides that corner, I can't remember too much conceding much of a chance against Tanzania. They looked very organised when it came to attacking set pieces as well as defending them. And DR Congo, they got off to a bad start against Zambia, but then rejuvenated once they got that equaliser and had more of the chances. Defended well against Patson Daka. Certainly were one of my dark horses for a reason. I'm thinking Morocco will still win, but DR Congo will do something in this game. I'm going to go with 2-1. And Zambia versus Tanzania, well, it's an alright start from Zambia. That goal they scored where the keeper was completely out of his box and defenders weren't in a great position to clear. I think that throw-in had to be taken quickly for Zambia to get that goal. And after that, most of the chances went to DR Congo's way, and Zambia kind of only looked convincing to an extent when they were out wide. And then Tanzania, they had a bad game. Once they went back, they didn't look at all like getting back in the game. They were fouling a lot. It goes to show that they had no way of getting back in the game. Of course, they went down to 10 men. Samatta's not the same player. And yes, they have defended well against Algeria before, so maybe they could close out Zambia here, especially with Patson Daka and Fashion Sakala not getting such service. But I think Zambia definitely are going to control the game. They're going to have a lot of chances. So I would say DR Congo have a better defense as well. I think Zambia will certainly be fine. To make second place fairly safe, I don't see much threat from Tanzania. I think Zambia are going to use their pace. The forwards are going to be in the box a lot. So I think there's going to be goals. I'm going to go 3-0 to Zambia. So there we have it. There were my predictions. What are your thoughts? What game are you looking forward to most on this match day? And until next time, see you in the next video.